Speaking of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Sometimes there's passages that are easier to preach on than others. So I read through this one about your wife and things like that. Is, you know, one has to be careful if you're married about what one says when you approach this subject. But the center passage from the epistle is much easier. It's something that people are always interested in, the end times and when's it going to happen, all this kind of thing. The only thing I'll say about that is we're called to be who we are today and proclaim the gospel and be God's children today and not worry about tomorrow. And we get so caught up in tomorrow. As we get back to this first passage from the Old Testament, you know, we have to understand the culture that they're speaking into, where women didn't really have a very big place. Notice what this wife is really the CEO of a major corporation that has a lot of branch offices and a lot of different things. You know, vineyards, flax and grain, you name it. Servants looking after the house, making a profit. Wow, this is an amazing woman, and she works past when the sun goes down. This is just amazing. You know, a wife like that, you can spend the rest of the day on the golf course, guys. It's wonderful. What's going on here? There's this, and also, you know, the thing is, don't be fooled by outward appearances, by her beauty. Look to the inward person is really what the message is. Somebody that's going to be a real life partner. This vision is of integrity and uprightness and of power and of capability. This amazing picture of what a woman is to be. Not that you can be all of these things, but notice that she's the one in charge. That she has a staff. It's not, ladies, that you have to do it all. This is impossible, you know. But really the vision is of one of a staff with capability, who can do these things, can own land and barter and all this kind of stuff. You know, there was once, you know, we had this sort of mythology, for those of you who may have been sort of raised over here, and when I was growing up, and this age of these servers here, I remember, you know, Father Knows Best was a TV show. Those of you with maybe a little gray hair might remember that one. Or Leave It to Beaver, that kind of thinking. Well, those are just myths. They never really existed. And this is the biblical concept is of a strong woman who knows who she is, who knows the talents that she's been given, and she works forward and makes it happen. Somebody who makes something happen. And then the husband is somebody who encourages her, who honors her, who respects her, who lifts her up, and that's what it's about. And Paul says, you know, husbands, love your wives. Okay, that's good. He says, as Christ loved the church and died for her. And died for her. As Christ loved the church and walked the way of the cross. As Christ loved the church and served the church. So you, as a husband, are to serve your wife. The wife is to love her husband. But the context is of this great sense of integrity and of ability, one for another. You know, when we went through the Second World War, the First and Second World War, one of the things that happened is that had a major impact on our culture. Because women had to go work in the factories. And I was thinking, today I was thinking, I haven't seen many stories about that. I don't know, has that been recorded? We need somebody needs to record that. The women went out and worked and said, well, they can't do that, you know, but they went out and they were plane mechanics and auto mechanics and factory workers and managers and did all that stuff. It changed our culture. And the whole 60s was trying to deal with that whole revolution of the 60s. And the 70s and 80s is still going on. How does that mean? But the sense of integrity and of personhood. And of the ability to reach out and to make something more than what it is. Because you see, we're all made in the image and likeness of God, men and women. And the core image of God is a creator who creates, who makes, who is joyful. Does that make sense? And then we have this reading here from the gospel. You know, it seems a bit harsh, doesn't it? But if we are made in the image of God, what is it that we ought to be showing forth to the world? And what is one of the key characteristics of God is one who creates. Artists and artisans. Whatever we do, we create, you know. When I go back, sometimes when you do homilies and do church stuff, you don't feel like you've done anything. You like to think you have. But it's nice to work with the hands, so I made some stained glass windows. Not very good ones, but I do that. Because it's something you do with your hands, it's something you see, you create. And so the master was with me, and they take what's given to them and they make more of it. And the one who's fearful is the one who loses. Notice that? Not the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is the fear of someone who has integrity and love and that we respect. That's a different kind of fear. But the fear that is terror of losing something, the fear that freezes you and that makes you so you can't do what you think you need to do, that's the fear. And what happened to this person who had this fear? He lost everything. How often do we allow fear to control what we do? To allow fear to stop us to do what we really want to do. Not that we should be, stupid, but to say, look, I'm going to trust God with what He's given me, and I'm going to push forward, even though I am fearful. I will not allow it to control me so that I lose what I've been given. Because the greatest thing that God's given us, what's between our ears, that 6 inches between the ears, is the most amazing thing. We've created this whole gymnasium, this whole culture, just out of thought. Designers create clothes just out of thin air, really. It's what we create. It's what's between our ears, And it doesn't matter about, we talk about, we think smart people. It doesn't, that's not what's between you, it's how we use it. I watched a show one time, it was this Down syndrome child, special needs. Except I'd rather just say special. And he had wanted to make a restaurant. So his parents said, he really was passionate about having a restaurant. So his parents helped him make it happen. So he has a restaurant, he calls it Hugs. Everybody that goes into that restaurant gets a hug. But it's his restaurant. It's his restaurant. And I read some comments on the internet about, his parents run into this, that. It's not, it's not really this. No, stop. He wanted that restaurant. He had the vision for what he wanted that restaurant to be. And he put together a team of people like this woman, like this wife. He put together a team of people who made it happen. And the tenor and tone of what goes on in that restaurant is set by him because he's the owner. And he has a team of people who run it. But he's there at the door when you show up, and he gives you a hug. He goes around to each table and says, "How was your meal? Did you like that meal?" He owned it. Doesn't matter he had downs. He had a vision. He knew he couldn't do everything. His parents knew he couldn't do everything. So together they worked out how he could do it. And there was a little sign, a little vision of him going to work, and he does a happy dance when he goes to work. How many of you do a happy dance when you go to work? Really? Who is Down syndrome? Who's trapped? Really? We trap ourselves by what's between our ears. We're called to treat each other, men and women, with dignity, and to recognize that women have this amazing ability to make things happen. They are the heart of the family. At least that's my experience. And as husbands, we're called to lift up our wives and to show them just how special they really are in the eyes of God. We're called to come together in marriage, which is a partnership of equality and of mutual love. And not to get caught up, oh, my wife can do all these things and that makes me feel small, because there's some small men who do that. But to recognize our equality and the talents and encourage one another and this great vision. That 1950s idea, or whatever it is that, stay at home with the kids, that just never was. It never was. But that vision of partnering, of building, of making something more, of working together, of building something good, that's where it's at. And we do it together, husband and wife. Husband and wife. God gives us talents, 5 talents, 2 talents, whatever it is. And then together, as a team, we go out into the world and make it happen. And do not act or make decisions out of this kind of fear, but rather step out in faith, trusting the Lord our God will be there for us. And he will hold us, and he will support us. Let us affirm that we are his children, and let us reach out into the world, proclaiming Jesus Christ by who we are and what we do, a people who reflect the Creator, who by their every deed and action make things better, make things glorious, because we serve the glorious Creator. May his love fill your hearts always.